Wanted to do an update slash review of my 2004 Honda RC51. Obviously, if you're watching this video, you probably know what it is. And if you are considering getting one, I'll give you maybe some pointers here, some encouragement more than anything. Cut to the chase, yes, you should go ahead and just buy one. I've got kind of a cool story with this bike, so I kind of wanted to go over that. I had bought this bike in 2006. I had been looking at them in the dealership since they were new, always wanted one. They were kind of expensive. They were more than a 1000cc bike at the time than the CBRs or whatnot. So I was still riding 600s at the time, but you can't look away from this bike. It's just an absolutely just gorgeous bike. So I really didn't know a whole lot about it. I could see the two pipes, so I knew, something was different with it, the V-twin, things like that, but didn't really get to understand the bike until I actually owned it. One of the main things that you hear about this bike is that gear-driven cam, and that really is quite different. Most bikes have the chain-driven cams, and so that what you get with this, obviously with the low torque, you get that low grumble sound of the V-twin, but at the same time you get that high whine of the gear-driven cam. I wasn't expecting that the first few times I rode it, and I really found it to be really enjoyable. I really, just the sound of that, just those two combined are pretty cool. I kept this bike for 2 years and I sold it. I had put, the bike had 10,000 miles on it when I sold it. I thought that was getting kind of high. And of course, I've always regretted it. I didn't realize the gear-driven cam, that really kind of spells out reliability. So you're seeing bikes now, 20 years later, 50, 70,000 miles. This bike has 26,000 miles on it. Not completely accurate because it has had a sprocket without the speedo fix on it, so it probably has less than the 26,000 miles on it. I've always been looking for one after I sold it. I did momentarily have an SP1, a 2001. I really didn't, my riding capability probably doesn't show the difference between the SP1 and the SP2. I found that bike to be just as enjoyable, but I always wanted this bike back. I did come across this same bike, the same VIN, years later on Craigslist. The guy I sold it to, several hours away, he had it for sale. We chatted. I just had a couple new kids. Didn't think that I really needed this bike in my life, but I had been looking and I did find it. So I passed on it. And then 2 years ago, I was on Facebook Marketplace looking for a 2004 RC51. I pretty much had made up my mind I was gonna look for one again. And lo and behold, here it was. It had just been listed on Facebook Marketplace, same VIN. I could tell because I had put the flush mount blinkers on it back in 2007. I had put these D&D pipes on it, 2007. And then we had it in a trailer, and my buddy's floor hooks had broke, and so this little area, that's touch-up paint that I had put on there, 15 years ago, because the bike had fallen over in the trailer. Really embarrassed about that, but it wasn't really anybody's fault. So it is back in my life, and I don't foresee myself ever getting rid of this bike. I absolutely love it. A lot of the reviews are going to talk about the heritage, the Nicky Hayden, Colin Edwards, Joey Dunlop, even Valentino Rossi has won on this bike. I think the Rossi and Colin Edwards had teamed up in the 24-hour Suzuka race. So you get those names winning on this bike. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool. I will say it's 20 years later. If you're buying this bike, you're not buying it because it's the fastest bike out there. You're buying it because you know what it is, and it's an enjoyable bike. The sound more than anything. It's just going through the gears, even engine braking, coming up to stoplights, things like that. It's fun. Riding through the neighborhood at 25 miles an hour. It's enjoyable. It's crazy how enjoyable it is. I just absolutely love it. I feel that I've got a little bit more tie into this bike too. My wife and I, we had gone to the MotoGP races in 2011. Nicky Hayden at that point was riding Ducati, but we had gotten paddock passes. My wife actually ended up being the umbrella girl for JD Beach in the Superbike race when he was riding for that 1 year for Attack Kawasaki on the ZX-10. And so we watched the Superbike race. We saw Tommy Hayden win, and I believe it was the first time he had won a Superbike race. And Nicky was in attendance. Obviously, he was riding MotoGP. So Tommy was up on the podium. Nicky was right there. I was standing next to Nicky. I kind of leaned in for a photo just to have him in the background. He looked over at the camera, at my wife, threw up the peace sign. So I got a great picture with me and Nicky. I've also spoken to the other brothers, Roger and Tommy, and Earl. Man, I volunteered at Moto America races in Road Atlanta and VIR, and man, if you strike up a conversation with that guy, he's gone now, but man, he would just talk your ear off. I really enjoyed talking to him. So the fact that this is a Nicky Hayden edition bike that I've owned now twice, I was the second and now the fifth owner, really feel I've got to tie into this bike, more sentimental than anything. So rest in peace both to Nicky and to Earl. Miss those guys, but yeah, I think this bike definitely reminds me of some of those good memories watching Nicky win and things like that. So again, I would say you're not buying this bike because of its heritage on the track. It was known, you know, as the winner, you know, AMA, World Superbike, Suzuka that I mentioned, the TT races. But you know, that was 20 years ago, so it's a powerful bike, you know, 136 horse, but the bikes of today are 200 horse, right? So I'm not going to spec sheet on you. I'm not going to go crazy on that because I know it doesn't compare to the bikes of today. But the enjoyability is definitely there. The thing I mentioned in the other video I took of this bike is, you know, some of the new bikes with the 200 horsepower, you are having to deal with the heat. You know, with 200 horsepower, you know, that's a byproduct of that much horse, and it takes the street ability away. I do look at this now as more of a street bike. If you come across one that's already a track bike, then boy, you know, have fun with it. That sounds great. I would not take a bike like this and convert it to a track bike. I would leave it as is. The tail section here was chopped when I bought the bike. I've left it. I've done some conversions previously. You know, the undertail systems, it kind of, you know, reduces the structural reliability of the bike. I didn't like that, so I've left that tail section. I've left the big blinkers. You know, I've got 5 kids, kind of like that people can see me. I've considered possibly even putting the OEM blinkers on the front. Haven't done that yet. The original owner that I bought it from had already taken the VIN plate off the frame there. You can see it's got the, you know, the couple little holes there. That's from the VIN plate. The guy that I sold it to did have cafe mirrors on it, and that's why this sticker has rubbed off there. I do have a replacement sticker, not an OEM one. I haven't put it on yet because I like the idea of OEM, so I'm still looking for an OEM one. But other than that, when I got the bike back, I put the stock mirrors on it, had the forks rebuilt, put a new chain on it, put new tires on it, new fluids, new front brake fluid. Haven't done the rear yet, but the next time it goes in, I'll get the rear done. But yeah, over and all, just an absolute enjoyable bike. Just absolutely love it. I'll do a quick startup. The D&D, I put those on in 2007, the first time I owned this bike. Didn't do it for performance, did it just because they're D&D and they're just kind of known as being the loud pipe. So here we go.